Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror comedy movie called The Cabin in the Woods. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Beneath the Earth's surface lives a cabal of ancient and giant, godlike creatures. The only thing that stops them from coming up and wrecking our societies is regular human sacrifice. It is revealed that several secret laboratories have been established around the world to carry out the process. They find and sacrifice hundreds of young people every month to appease these godlike beings. In one such US laboratory, engineer Steve is complaining about his married life with his colleague Gary. The duo is heading back to their workstations when they are approached by the lab's chief chemist, Lynn. She anxiously reveals that a similar lab in Stockholm has failed its task. It is now up to them and the Japanese lab to fulfill their quota of human sacrifices. Although the men are shocked by the news, they reassure Lynn that they won't mess it up. Elsewhere, at a nearby university campus, Dana prepares her bag for an upcoming weekend trip. She is soon joined by her two close friends, Jules and her boyfriend Kurt. The trio carries their luggage and loads it up into a camper van. After a while, they are joined by other members of their group, stoner Marty and transfer student Holden. Kurt takes the steering wheel, and they make their way to his cousin's cabin in the nearby woods. None of these students know that they are about to be the next batch of human sacrifices. On the way to the cabin, the group passes through a mountain tunnel, unaware that they are now entering an invisible one-way dome. They finally arrive at their destination, and everyone begins unpacking. Holden goes into his room, where he spots an eerie painting depicting a horse being skinned. This spooks him, and he takes the painting down, only to discover that it is hiding a one-way mirror. On the other side is Dana, who is currently changing in her own room. Holden quickly shows the mirror to everyone and switches rooms with Dana. You guys can watch me change if you want. I don't mind. At the lab, Steve and Gary are watching the youngsters through the cameras they've hidden throughout the cabin. They are making final preparations to begin the process of the ritualistic sacrifice. Meanwhile, the youngsters get a party started by bringing out the booze and turning on the music. They play truth or dare, and it's now Dana's turn. Just as she chooses dare, a secret cellar door blasts open behind them. While the rest of the group is stunned, Jules dares Dana to enter inside. The latter also refuses to chicken out and brings a flashlight to explore the cellar. She sees that it is full of weird antiques from the previous owners. Soon enough, the rest of the group joins her in the basement and explores the mysterious room. Dana picks up an old journal from nearby, and the group quickly huddles around her. It turns out the diary belonged to someone named Anna Patience Buckner, who lived in 1903 with her sadistic family, led by patriarch John Buckner. As Dana reads the last words of the diary, the corpses of the Buckner family mysteriously rise from a nearby grave. Later that night, Marty, who's high on weed, tells Dana that something weird is happening. He doesn't understand why Jules is acting like a dumb blonde when she's in pre-med. Kurt also is suddenly turned into a high school jock when in fact he's a sociology major on a full academic scholarship. He shares his theory that there might be puppeteers controlling them. Like, I don't even like weed! But Dana dismisses his points. Meanwhile, the young couple starts making out in the woods, unaware that a room full of men is watching them. The engineers turn on artificial pheromone mists and light the way to a clearing where the couple can have their little outing. Everyone in the lab then watches on as Jules and Kurt make love on the ground. At this romantic moment, the Buckners arrive and stab a dagger into Jules' hands. A horrified Kurt is also impaled through the back, but he manages to punch down one of the corpses. As the scuffle intensifies, Jules runs towards her boyfriend, but she's chained down and dragged by another zombie. Poor Kurt can only watch in horror as the monsters cut off her head with a saw.
I'd save you, but deny where my hammer is.
Moments later, the engineers say a little prayer before they turn on an underground mechanism. This drains Jules' blood into a pipeline below the ground that eventually leads to a stone tomb. Back at the cabin, Marty smokes another fatty to keep his mind off the voices that he's hearing. That won't help. He also decides to take a leak outside, but a bloodied Kurt appears on the spot and drags him back into the cabin. Kurt then tells the group that Jules is gone and they should start barricading all the doors and windows. Confused, Dana refuses to oblige and opens the door to look for her friend, but this This turns out to be a bad decision, as she comes face to face with a horrifying sight. The zombie of John Buckner is standing on the porch, and he tosses in Jules' severed head. Dana screams in horror as the boys somehow lock down the door. Kurt then tells them that no matter what happens, they have to stay together. "That's not how we like to do it, Scoob." Upon hearing this, Gary presses a button that releases gas through the cabin vents, which lowers human cognition. Kurt inhales the gas and suddenly changes his mind. He tells the group that they should split up so that they cover more ground. Shortly after, a zombie breaks down the front door, forcing the group to separate and hide in their individual rooms. The engineers then press another button which locks all the bedroom doors. Meanwhile, as Marty is closing down a window, he accidentally knocks down a lamp. He stares at the broken lamp and sees a tiny hidden camera in it. A shocked Marty then pulls a long cable hidden within the walls of his room. This makes him realize that his suspicions are correct. Someone is watching them. Unfortunately, before he can inform the others, tragedy strikes. The window behind him bursts open and the corpse of John Buckner drags him outside. Marty fights tooth and nail to save his life. He hits the zombie with his thermos flask and manages to create some separation, but the corpse throws a dagger, which hits Marty in the back. The poor stoner collapses to the ground, screaming for help.
Zoinks!
But his pleas fall on deaf ears, and the corpse drags him to a nearby grave. Just like before, the engineers open the pipeline and blood is drained into the underground stone tomb. The ground rumbles as the gods accept the second sacrifice. Meanwhile, Dana is trapped and panicking in her bedroom. She grows even more worried as an undead makes its way towards her window. Thankfully, Holden rescues her by breaking the one-way mirror between their rooms. He pulls her to his side, and the duo immediately starts barricading the windows. This is when they find yet another trapdoor on the floor. They realize there is no other way out, so both of them escape through it. As soon as they land underneath, Dana makes a horrifying revelation. They have arrived in the torture room from the journal. The duo starts looking around for a potential exit when suddenly one of the corpses catches Holden through the trapdoor. It pulls him upwards, but Dana manages to stop it by driving a crowbar right into its neck. She then grabs a nearby knife and angrily stabs the undead several times. Right at this moment, a door in the torture room's wall breaks open. The duo braces themselves for the arrival of more zombies, but they get a welcome surprise. Kurt comes through the door and quickly leads them out of the torture room. Once they're outside, they jump into their camper van, and Kurt takes the wheel so they can finally escape this hellhole. The scene abruptly changes, and we get to see that Japan has failed in its sacrifice to the gods. Now it's up to Steve and Gary to fulfill the human sacrifice quota at any cost. The duo's panic only increases when they notice the van is heading towards the mountain tunnel. Gary suddenly remembers that the path is still open and realizes that he has made a mistake. Turns out the demolition team hasn't initiated the explosion due to a technical issue. He thus runs to the pyrotechnics department and fixes the electronic problem himself. Gary finally gets the operation going, and moments later, an explosion erupts above the tunnel. Huge rocks begin to cave in, and the group of survivors are forced to quickly reverse their van. They are now trapped, as the tunnel was their only way out of the woods. However, they realize that there is a chasm between where they are currently standing and a pathway on the other side. Kurt comes up with a plan. He'll take his motorbike that he had attached to the back of the van. He wants to jump to the other side with the motorcycle and then run to the nearest town for help. He backs away and fully revs towards the gap between the two roads. For one moment, it looks like he will safely make it to the other side. Unfortunately, he smashes straight into the invisible force field. Kurt is instantly killed and is thrown into a deep trench together with his wrecked motorcycle. This makes the two remaining friends scream in horror, and they rush back into the camper. They then have a tense conversation during which Dana says that Marty was right all along. Someone is watching and controlling their every move. They will never escape unless they find a way to reveal who's behind this. Unfortunately for them, one of the corpses appears inside the camper. It stabs Holden through the throat with a sharp rod, killing him on the spot. A petrified Dana screams as the camper goes out of control and crashes into a nearby lake. While the vehicle sinks deeper into the water, the zombie tries to grab Dana's leg, but she desperately kicks it in the face and somehow swims to the surface. Back at the lab, all the employees begin celebrating with loud cheers. It turns out that 4 sacrifices are enough to appease the gods. The death of a virgin, in this case Dana, is optional. It doesn't matter whether she lives or dies, as long as she suffers at the hands of the monsters. Meanwhile, Dana drags herself to the banks of the lake and realizes all her friends are dead. But her struggles are far from over, as the zombie that had attacked tractor in the van emerges out of the lake. It walks towards Dana, who is flat on her back due to exhaustion, and starts strangling her. On the other hand, Gary approaches the demolition team and jokes about almost failing the mission, but the team insists that they didn't get their orders because there was a power glitch in their system. It is obvious that someone has messed up the wires they have hidden in the killing field. Suddenly, the control room's telephone begins to ring and Steve picks it up. The director of the laboratory is on the other side, and she has bad news. It turns out that one of the students besides Dana is still alive, and the ritual hasn't been completed yet. In the meantime, Dana is about to be stabbed, but the zombie suddenly collapses behind her. It turns out to be Marty's doing, who has miraculously managed to stay alive.
I'm alive!
The two then make a run for it, and Marty leads her inside one of the graves. To Dana's utter shock, she sees that the grave is in fact a huge tunnel. There is also the dismembered remains of one of the zombies nearby. It is revealed that Marty had somehow managed to kill the monster that had dragged him in this grave. He is also the one that caused the power glitch that the demolition team was talking about. Following this, Marty shows Dana an elevator that he discovered underneath the grave. It is now obvious to the youngsters that someone sent those zombies after them. If they want to escape, the only way is to go down. Thus, they hop into the elevator along with the severed zombie arm. After a few minutes, the elevator takes them deep into a large network of dungeons. The two friends soon come face to face with several kinds of monsters in glass cages. Upon seeing them, Dana suddenly realizes a harrowing truth. The people behind this whole incident made them choose which kind of monster they would face. She had picked up the journal, unwittingly choosing the zombies and causing the deaths of her friends. At least she didn't unwittingly pick leprechauns. Meanwhile, in the control room, Gary sends a security guard towards the elevator. He wants to eliminate Marty so the ritual can be completed. Sometime later, the elevator doors open, and the security guard comes face to face with the two survivors. In a stroke of luck, the zombie's arm grabs the guard's legs, distracting him. The duo takes this opportunity to eliminate him and grab his gun along with a nearby dagger. They then escape from the spot and quickly find themselves in a hallway with a lot of doors. Suddenly, a woman starts speaking through the speaker system. She tells them to give up and allow themselves to be sacrificed. However, the survivors hide in one of the operator rooms. Right before a squad of guards starts firing at them, Dana realizes that there is a control system nearby, and she punches a big red button on it. This causes all the doors in the hallway to open, releasing an army of monsters. The entire squad of guards is instantly taken down by various demons, who are now free to roam the lab. On the other hand, Gary, Steve, and Lynn have locked themselves in the main control room. Their defenses have been overridden, and there is no way out. Elsewhere, Dana and Marty quickly get out of the operator's room and escape through a hole in the hallway. Back at the control room, the monsters manage to break down the steel door. Steve tries his best to keep them at bay with his machine gun. Gary, meanwhile, puts in the code for the escape hatch leading downstairs. Unfortunately for them, an explosion erupts in the control room, causing Steve to be blasted into the air. A hideous, fish-like monster then approaches him and eats him alive. Thankfully, Gary manages to open the hatch and escapes the control room just in the nick of time. He runs through a dark hall, but doesn't make it too far. Gary runs into Dana, who stabs him in the chest with her dagger. Following this, Marty hands her the gun, and they go further into the tunnel. The duo soon finds themselves inside a chamber surrounded by 5 stone tombs. This is when the lab's director reveals herself and finally tells them the truth. If they don't make the sacrifice, the gods who rule the earth will rise again and create havoc. She tells them that the sun is coming up in 8 minutes, and if Dana wants to save the rest of humanity, she must kill Marty. Utterly shaken by this revelation, Dana raises the gun at her friend. Marty can only stare in disbelief as he realizes what she's about to do, but before Dana can pull the trigger, a werewolf lunges from the shadows and bites her in the neck. She recoils due to the pain, causing her to fall nearby. The director and Marty then fight to take control of the weapon. After an intense skirmish, Marty grabs the gun and empties the bullets into the werewolf. This causes it to run away whimpering, and Dana also manages to survive. Marty then turns his attention towards the director and pushes her into the raging depths below. Unfortunately, all these heroics mean nothing for them as the ritual has failed. The two friends then sit down and share one last smoke together. The movie ends as a giant hand erupts from the depths and obliterates the lab. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.